Hello, welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar. I'm your host, Troy Haynes, and we're 2 days away from the state meet qualifying. The only event I'm reporting on is high jump, but obviously everybody's going to be there. Sprinters, hurdlers, jumpers of all kinds, pole vaulters, throwers. It's the big state meet. Happens once a year. It's at Buchanan High School up in Clovis, which is close to Fresno, and it's in the middle of the state pretty much. Um, I'm not an expert on where it is, but it's a good 4 hour drive north of here. So that puts it in the middle of state in my reckoning. But it's a long ways. But yeah, so this week is the culmination of a year of training, pretty much. Two of my jumpers, Nate Baca of Ayala High School and Tyler Malinowski from Peninsula High School, um, made it through Division One and Two, both CIF prelims, CIF finals. Nate won with a 6'10" jump, and Tyler came in second, three-way tie for second with 6'6". And then they made it to the Masters meet and made it through the Masters meet, so they're going to state. And then one of our jumpers from San Pedro, Derrick Johnson, he also jumped 6'2" at his city CIF qualifier, came in third, and that qualified him to go to state. And then we have Kate Hemesath from Northern California. She's been a pretty steady client last couple of years. She comes down and trains with us when she can. You know, it's a long drive from Sacramento, but on holidays and sometimes in the summer, we'll see Kate sometimes for a couple days, 2, 3, 4 in a row. And she's jumped great. She jumped 5'6" earlier this year. She jumped 5'5" at her sectional qualifier, and she's going to go. So this is a record haul for Sky High and Fly Jump Lab. We have 4 jumpers going to state. So I just wanted to do a little bit of a rant on the state of the state meet, the state of state. And I'm looking back at it now after 40 something years. I graduated in 1982. This is now 2025. So I can do the math. What is that? It doesn't work out good for me. It's 18 years to get to the 2000s and then another 25. So 43 years. Did I do that right? 43 years ago, I was a senior in high school and I made it to the state meet for the first and only time. And thank God it was not at, no offense to Buchanan High School. I'm not crazy about their high jump area. The rest of the track is really nice. I'm sure it's highly functional for everybody. I'm just not crazy about the high jump setup, but you know, what do I know? So yeah, it's a nice place, big meet. It's a lot like getting back to CIF prelims. For the kids down here, CIF prelims, we got 4 sections. The Southern section is the biggest section in the state of California. And we have a very high representation rate on who scores points at that meet. There are some very good athletes from the north. There just don't seem to be quite as many. Maybe the population's not as dense. I don't know what, but there's always a couple of high jumpers from up there, a 7-footer here, a 6'10" there, 6'8", but they just don't usually have the depth that we have down here as far as quality goes, number, right? But it's always kind of crazy for these guys down here because they get a little bit used to seeing each other. They see each other at the big invites. They see each other at the small invites. They see each other at, CIF, this whole run, league finals, CIF prelims, CIF finals, masters, and then state. So they've seen a lot of jumpers, but they don't see the kids from up north unless it was like at Arcadia, maybe, or Mount Sac, or gosh, back in the day, I got to see Maurice Crumby, who ended up being 3-time state champ in the high jump at the Sunkist indoor meet, which was an experience that I'd rather forget for the most part. I never jump well indoors. So it's a bizarre thing out here, jumping off wood and everything. I'd much rather jump on a basketball court in tennis shoes than the way they had it set up. But so yeah, that was 40, 46. I already did the math once. I forgot. 43 years ago. And but it's a lot like CIF prelims. They're going to throw. We got I think there were 7 qualifiers here. The qualifying height was 6'6". That was the standard. I think they took 6+, and we had one more make it in with a 6'6". We had 7 people over 6'6", and they all went. San Diego sends a couple, the San Diego section, and then City sends 3. I believe I want to say there's 18 from down here, but that math isn't really quite working out. 7 and 3 is only, I know they don't say an 8 from down south of us. So yeah, it's a decent number, but there'll end up being 30 something kids up there at the qualifier. And I'm not that good at looking up all the information. I know starting height in the past has been as high as 6'3". My first year back to the state meet while coaching here at Sky High and Fly was in 2018. And Kevin Schmidt, who has since graduated from the University of Cal Poly um, San Luis Obispo, he was jumping 6'9" for me at the time at Los Alamitos High School, and he went up there, and the opening height was 6'3". The next year with Jack Weissman and Aiden Garnett and Kyle Jenkins, that group, the opening height, I believe, was either, I want to say 6'2" or 6'3". For some reason, they like the odds up there that I remember. Um, and then it's been a small drought. I've had a couple years where I had athletes go, most notably Seth Johnson, who ended up winning the state meet with a record low of 6'5" or something. I think there was some torrential rain and wind or something that I heard about. I didn't get to go to that one. But so it's been a while since I've seen the opening height, for instance. But the first day of qualifying is just a big cluster, just like CIF, prelims. They throw 36 kids in the hopper, and then you just cut it down to 12, I think, will make the final. And so you keep count every time the bar goes up. In Kevin's year, it turned out to be a lower year, even though he was up there as a 6'9" jumper. And then Sean Lee, who was a couple-time state champ, um, he was getting ready to win his second at that meet. And I think, yeah, 6'3" would have made it in that year. So I think it's gonna be a little bit higher this year. I think it might be 6'5", but still don't know. I haven't done my research yet as to what the opening height's going to be. Nate and Tyler are used to opening at 6'2". They've been doing it for the last 2 or 3 weeks now. So I think 6'2" or 6'3". I don't think it's gonna bother them a whole lot. Be a little bit of a push for Derrick. He just jumped 6'2" last week. It was a PR at the right time. He's had a couple really good workouts. I'm really excited to see. He's got a ton of potential. He just doesn't have a lot of reps in yet. But man, he's real strong and got a great knee drive, and he's super flexible on top. So if we get him in the right spot at the right time, he's my favorite. He's my dark horse favorite. I told him the other day. I said if we were gambling, nobody's out there gambling on sports anywhere, right? If we were gambling, I said if I went to Vegas on you right now, that your odds would be amazing. You'd be like plus, $750 or, plus 2,000 to win. I could put $10 on you and make bank. Whereas, if you go up there and put the money on Nate, who just jumped 6'10" a couple weeks ago, or Josh Harrell from Notre Dame, who jumped 7 feet last year, 6'10" this year. There's another 7-footer in the crowd from up north. They would be the betting favorites, and it's hard to make money on the favorites, right? You gotta back the favorites with a lot of cash, and if they get upset, you get upset because you lose all your money. So the value bet sometimes, if they were, it'd be kind of fun to do this like golf. I listened to the Three and Out podcast with John Middlecoff, and he's got another one about golf, and he's always laying out his favorite, bets for the top 10, top 20s, I guess, on DraftKings. You can put money down, right? So, again, they don't have these lines. I'm totally talking, but it would be fun because I know where I would be putting some of my money. And it's yeah, Derrick's a wild card, man. Nobody knows he's coming. But the cool thing about him is I told him he's playing with house money. He got into the state meet and he's on a roll. He just PR'd and he's had a couple good workouts, and everybody else can be looking at everybody else. They're not going to see him coming. And then Kate Hemesath is she's been jumping with me for a few years. This is her senior year. Very tall, very fast, single armor, and she's got a lot of stretch in there. I'm waiting to see what happens. I'm still trying to get her a little bit farther away from the bar and high speed, and not bailing into the bar quickly. A lot of jumpers still are, in my estimation, in the middle of their takeoff already in their layout. And as the bar keeps going higher and higher, it can still work because you may get stronger and faster and be able to get away with it. But I still think most people are stealing from their flight phase by laying out too early and then limiting how high they can jump, because it's kind of a recipe for disaster. You can make a low bar by a lot of height when you're in a great layout position too early, but that becomes problematic as the bar goes up. So we shall see. We shall see. I would love to see them all make it through the qualifier. Like I said, the bar just keeps going up and they keep counting. So, say the bar opens at 6'3" and 20 kids make it, they're going to go up. If only, 10 make it or something, that would be a nightmare because they'd only get 10 into the final if that was the true opening height, because you really can't get someone in who no-heighted. You have to have a height on record, to make the qualifier. So, but I'm pretty sure even if they open at 6'3", I don't think they'll get everybody at that height. But at 6'5", would be pretty good. I remember my year in 1982. This is the year after Mike Powell and Chris Bonner from Edgewood and Anthony Kerr, who ended up going to USC. It's a good crowd. A couple 7-footers and 6'10" guys up there too. That was the year when I was a junior. I just got smoked at CIF finals. I jumped 6'7" to get in at the prelims, and then at the finals I jumped 6'4". I was deer in the headlights first time. So I don't know how it all shook out at state and what it took to get through there. But my year, the very next year, I believe there were 13 of us that cleared 6'8", and they said, we're just going to take 13. They didn't even jump. They didn't want to go to 6'10" or 6'9" just to get the qualifier, but 13 guys over 6'8" is a lot. So that was pretty exceptional. Some years are just deeper than others. Like I said, Crumby was there that year. John Morris, who ended up jumping at Cal. I jumped against John in college, and I always ended up losing. The only time I think I tied both him and Lee Balkin for my first time over 7'2" as a sophomore at UCLA, but I lost on misses. My famous uh, whiner story is that every time I had a personal best in college, I didn't even win the meet. I tell that to the kids. It's humbling. In high school, lots of times when you PR, you win, and I'm trying to think back, and it's weird. Almost all my PRs happened at one place or the other. In high school, I had almost every single PR was at Lakewood High School. I don't even know what was so special about that pit, but I don't know. And then almost everyone then at CIF finals was at Cerritos College, and that's where I got a big one. And then in college, it was almost always at home. No, you know what? I take that back. 7'2" was up at Cal. So 7 feet was at home. 7'2" was up at Cal. Then I didn't have one for a couple of years, and then 2.25, 3.25 were at UCLA. So 3 out of 4. Yeah. But and didn't even win the meet on any of those in college. So kind of humbling. But back to Nate and Tyler and Kate and Derrick. The qualifier is it's a weed out process. And the good thing about it is that they should be kind of on a roll of doing that, because we CIF prelims, same gig. Start the bar, keep going. You reach a certain number, you're done. And at CIF prelims, they don't let you continue. And then at CIF finals, it's not really that way because everybody in the 4 divisions jumps to the conclusion. But the way that it's decided is the same. They'll take the top, I think it was 18 in ties, which gave us 22 jumpers last week. And that, again, once you throw it, the Masters meet was an awful lot like CIF prelims. Same idea. Bar started at 6'2", went to 6'4". I think at 6'4", there were still more than 12 over. They go up to 6'6". 7 guys made it. So we say take at least 7. I didn't look at the list after that because I knew Tyler and Nate were in. I didn't care about everybody else. The one difference about that was that they let it jump out, which was pretty, I don't know, pretty interesting. I was not a big fan of that for a couple reasons. There was young Mr. Harrell, Josh Harrell from Notre Dame, who went all the way to state meet last year. I think he came in second, jumped 6'10" or 7 feet. A super talented kid. And he's in, I think, in both the long and the triple as well. I know he's in at least one of them. You'd think I'd do my research before I start talking. And then the young man, Mr. Browner from Chaminade. And I know he's also a long and or a triple jumper and a good one. They're both very talented. And, I remember his coach telling me, or I overheard him. I talked to him last week. This time I wasn't talking with him, but I overheard him talking to Mr. Browner and saying, hey, once we're at 6'6", maybe we take one at 6'8", but we don't really need this. And that's my sentiment. My sentiment is I don't really need to have them jump super high this week. I need them to jump high next week. I need them to jump high this week on Friday. So, high enough to get a shot to jump really high on Saturday. It's a Friday, Saturday. And that's a new experience. Most of these guys do not jump 2 days in a row. Now, maybe they do, maybe they don't. Not competitively, I'm willing to bet. We don't have a lot of those anywhere. So getting through the qualifying and come back with only less than a day's rest, which means ice bath. We'll have a rant on that some other time. But yeah, it's a tough turnaround. So anyway, back to the story. These two guys, I believe of all the guys that made 6'6", Nate Baca, we shut him down. He's battled a few injuries. Last year we had kind of the same thing. As he got through CI finals, he jumped really well. He went to the Masters meet. He was just this, had a hamstring and a little bit of a back, and he wasn't 100% when he got to the Masters meet. So this year, knowing that he could do the triple, which he did, and he also could run the hurdle. Kid's athletic, he can do anything. But we just decided that, his dad and I and other coaches there at Ayala, we said, hey, he actually was going to take his triple jumps, but his dad and I talked before, and he said, yeah, even if he does make it through the Masters and qualify for state, we're not going to have him jump at state. Didn't think it was a high return, investment. So said, okay, well, at 6'6", he had gone, I think it was 6'2", 6'4", 6'6". He had a miss in there somewhere. And then pretty short day, we got it. We got 6'6". We're in, right? So we just cut it. And he went off to do the triple. And that was that. Now, Tyler is a sprinter. So he's on his 4x4 team, but he had a long wait in between the high jump and the 4x4. 4x4 is last. So, he had a long wait to go on that. And, he hadn't made 6'8" yet. So, maybe it's a little confidence boost. We took a shot at it. Now, his two jumps weren't fabulous. And I said, let's not take a third jump. Let's just start resting now. So we shut him down. But the other guys that made it, I think these two are the only two that pursued it. I remember Tyler. There might have been one. I didn't pay attention, but I was a little bit surprised, to say the least, that both Mr. Harold and the kid from Chaminade, they both jumped, Mr. Browner, they both jumped 6'8", but nobody made it on their first. Another example, Mr. Gorski from Mater Dei. He made 6'6" to get in. And he's an experienced campaigner. He's been to state 4 times. And he had other long jump and, other things to do. And he was done. As soon as he got over 6'6", I didn't see him take another jump either. Now, I may not have been paying attention. I've been accused of that before. But I don't think so. And so the drama unfolds in that both Mr. Brown and Mr. Harrell continue to jump. They jumped 6'8". Neither of them made it on their first. Then they jumped 6'10". Neither of them made that one on their first. And they both took at least 3 tries at 7 feet, I do believe. And if Mr. Browner didn't, I know that Mr. Harrell did. And so, my thought was I just couldn't see what the value was in that. So, it depends on the coach, depends on your feelings. Now, some people recover better than others. I got to say, when I look at Josh Harrell, he's not a huge, buff kid. He's tall, he's rangy, he's super quick and explosive, but I can see him recovering fine from one day to the next. And Mr. Browner from Chaminade, same, wiry, tall, fast, strong. They're probably not going to have any trouble. And things have come a long way in 45 years. I had never heard the words ice bath before. I wish I had. If I could do the Back to the Future, go back and talk to the younger Mr. Haynes, I would say, hey, send me back in the time machine, man. I'm going to go back to that hotel room and tell, the 18-year-old sky high and fly guy that you need to be in a tub full of ice, to get your body ready. I think I jumped 6'6" the next day and I was on fumes. I mean, it was ugly. I can't remember. I thought I might have got ninth. Um, and I was on a roll going into that meet, but I had no experience jumping back-to-back days and needed a whole nother day to recover. But I don't see the same problem with these two guys. And yet, it's an awful lot of jumps, to take at a meet that really doesn't do anything for you. Now, I heard somebody talking about jockeying for position and all that. I mean, I don't see it. If you want to be last on the list by coming in with the highest qualifying mark, okay, okay. There is a little value in that. Being the last one to go is definitely an advantage, unless somebody else just keeps making everything on their first and putting the pressure on you because you got to make it. But if they're not and you're hanging back, being at the last one in the order, I would always prefer that. So I get it. I do get that part of it. On the wear and tear aspect, I don't. I know the younger me, I would have said, if I could have not jumped at 6'8", the two times that I did to get in my senior year and stopped at 6'6", I would have been fresher for 6'8". It was such a tough year getting through. So, I mean, I would have preferred to only have jumped 6'5" or 6'3" like they got now, but it was deeper back then for sure. So, yeah, that was the big drama, as we went in. And then now it's simply, recover. Um, we did a few things. Derrick took some jumps yesterday. That was Tuesday. He's got a couple days to recover. Kyle and Tyler didn't really get after it yesterday. We just kind of covered a couple ideas and did, some short stuff. But it's really hard. It's been a long grind. I'm getting kind of tired, kind of fuzzy. I gotta really pay attention and watch the videos and see what's going on. So Friday night we qualify. Now it's supposed to be 100 degrees up in Fresno this weekend, or Clovis, or wherever we are. The Fresno area, which includes Clovis, and 104 is really hot. So I think they've pushed the time back, which is wise because it's longer days of the year coming in. If they instead of starting at 3, I think they're starting at 5 or 6 or 7. I've heard some really nice late numbers, so that's a good thing because then they won't be roasting in the sun, right? And we had that CIF Division 3 prelim got shut down for 4 hours because it was too hot. So don't want people passing out and having physical problems due to the heat. So, but that's the state of the nation. We're going to go up there fully loaded. Got 4 athletes ready to compete. And, for the seniors, which I believe is just Kate. Kate is a senior, and, she's going to make somebody happy to get a tall hurdler, high jumper, with potential, and hoping she does well. These guys, Nate has right now the higher, marks going in, and I think he's a little bit healthier than he was last year. So, I expect him to do well, and Tyler's becoming very consistent at 6'6". He's made it 3 times now. He wasn't as clean this week as he was the week before, but hoping for a little bit of rest and the excitement of the meet to carry the day there. So, and if they make it through, then we're at the finals the next day. And the interesting part about that is the change in the how it's run. So, for instance, they will, as I remember from Aiden and Jack's year, they went probably 6'3" again. I think it was 6'3", 6'5", 6'7". Boom, boom, boom. And then once they got to 6'7", they started going by every inch. Now that's different for many of the kids. And when I found out about that, I cautioned Jack at that time, Jack Wiseman. I said, hey, we have to pass some jumps in here. You don't want to jump every inch, now. Again, long season and dragging on. And, Jack was clean 6'3", 6'5", 6'7". The one that we should have skipped was 6'8", but I couldn't talk him into it. So he jumped 6'8", and then he jumped 6'9", and he was still clean. So at 6'9", with Tyler Cash still in the mix, and Bo, I can't remember Bo's last name. He went off to Duke. The guy that ended up winning it from San Marcos. He was, I don't even know if he was clean at that point. I'm not sure. But Jack was sitting in as good a position as anybody. But then Tyler Cash made 6'10", and Bo ended up making 6'11". So, yep, that was it. He ended up getting third. And I would have liked to seen him a little fresher by not wasting the jump at 6'8", since he made 6'9", right? Just go 6'7", 6'9", and then even pass. Save that jump at 6'10", which he'd already made at the Masters meet the week before, and then jump at 6'11". So that's the one thing I would, I'm going to do my best to have these guys. And, the best teacher, of course, is history, right? You can say, hey, this is what happened to the guys that came before you. And I thought this was a mistake that we can avoid by, knowing that it's coming. So that's for the second day. And yeah, if any of these guys make it, I am not going to be able to be there, which I'm bummed about, but my son is getting married and the date was set a long time in advance. And so I have to be at a wedding. I'm going to miss the state final. Hopefully all four kids are there and I don't know, I'll be watching on my phone or something. Do we have that? I don't even know if we had that. That brings up my other rant for today, which is how do we save the sport of track and field? And in particular, how do we get a bigger spotlight on the field events? And very more specifically for us here at Raise the Bar, the high jump. High profile event. Everybody loves watching the high jump. They don't know anything about it. It's just kind of captivating. And you can sit down and watch and see some pretty amazing athletes do some pretty amazing stuff. But you just don't see that 9 times out of 10. Now at the Olympics, they do a better job. When I watched it on Peacock last year, I got to see the, jump to jump, the whole qualifier round and the final, men's and women's, and heptathlon and decathlon. I watched a lot of high jump, and that's better. It's better. They didn't have great commentators who knew what they were talking about, and they didn't have great camera angles, but they did get a lot of jumps in, which I appreciate. But I would love, and those of you that are out there, if anybody's listening in the powers that be that are trying to continue this great sport of track and field here in the U.S., and this is the problem with track and field, is that it's not on TV very often. It can be occasionally, but not very often. Sometimes we get the NC2A meet. It's coming up. I don't know when it's on. I haven't seen it advertised. I'm interested, but I have to dig. See, that means there's no advertising revenue being put in so that people get drawn in to watch. And then what are they going to see on this telecast? They're going to see every race, every lap of every race, every short sprint, every this, every that, and then a very, haphazard check in over here. Let's go talk to this guy over in a long jump for one jump and this guy. And they pick usually the leaders. They show you a couple of them. Then maybe they researched a little bit ahead of time and they know these guys are the ones that are hot or they're the ones that are supposed to win. And so they follow them a little bit more closely, but you don't get the whole thing from beginning to end. You don't get to see the whole pole vault from opening height to finish. You don't get to see the whole long jump or the shot or the disc, any of them. Okay. It's piecemeal because, and to their defense, it's going on while the other stuff is going on. So, in order to do it right, what you really need is a bunch of cameras. It's an investment. You got to have cameras well placed by experts, people like me, go in and say, hey, this would be a really good place for a camera. This is a great angle. You can see a lot of stuff from here. And then if I was doing the telecast, I'd be like, here, do we have a telestrator like, John Madden in football? I'd be like, hey, look at this angle. Look at this line right here. Look at this position. Okay, this is all really good stuff. Or this guy's having problems because of this. You could do all that. You can have excellent commentary. You could do it whenever you want. I think we should mic up coaches and athletes. I think we should have coach-athlete interchanges. They exchanges. They don't. they're dumb. I'm going to say it out loud. They're dumb. Okay. People in charge are dinosaurs. They are not going to get this sport that we love promoted so that everybody else can love it the way we do. Because we have great talent. We have all these things going for us. It keeps replenishing every year, and the new wave comes up. But I know track and field as well as anybody knows track and field. But at the same time, you can say, and okay, it's jumps only, but I should know who's the top sprinter in California for the men. I have no idea. Who's the top woman? I don't know. Who's the top three American men that are going to go to the Worlds? I don't know. You know, if it was my job to know, I'm sure I could. But that stuff should be coming at you in waves. You know, you should be able to tell because you've seen it, right? You've seen a couple of early season meets maybe or whatever that you need to see to know these names. Now, sometimes every 4 years we start to get more because it's an Olympic year. Okay. But for the most part, you know, it's not very well done thus far. It's getting better, getting a little bit better here and there. I'd like to see more events on YouTube, maybe some people trying to Instagram. We did the last 2 weekends in a row. Alan Hankel, coach and, you know, of Doug Nordquist, who, you know, great American high jumper at the 84 games and head jumped 236 on a cadaver reconstructed left knee. Great golfer, by the way, and good friend. Alan and I were trying to do a live Instagram, you know, and it was challenging because there was all kinds of stuff for us to talk about, but the camera angles were crap. You know, we can't get on the track. You can't get down there. And they've prohibited, you know, interaction between the athlete and the jumper. The athletes are not supposed to go across the track. Heaven forbid. You can't do that. It's a big meet. Why would you want to know anything from your coach? You should be so well coached by now that you know everything. These are high school kids. They don't know everything. If I could teach them everything that I know, I'd be a better coach by now. You know, I can't do it in 5 minutes or a month or a year sometimes. There's a lot of experience in there. So, you know, yeah, you notice something like, hey, you know, now instead of letting them come over and talk, I got to yell across the track, right? And everybody's going to hear my bon mots of wisdom and interpret for themselves whether I know what I'm talking about or not, right? But why does it have to be shared with everybody? Why can't my athlete come over here? You know, they can't be on their cell phones. They can't do this and that. I get that. But at the same time, you know, here's the unfair part. And I love pole vaulters. I think they're awesome. I think the pole vault is one of the greatest things in the world to watch. Super technical, amazing athletes. The coaches, for the most part, have all been high level vaulters themselves. You know, I've been around Anthony Curran and watched him work. He's amazing. One of the best coaches in the world. You know, I've got the Tullys. You know, Steve Tully is coaching at Los Alamitos where I was routinely every year, kicking out 15-footers, 16-foot guys, going to state. All the big meets, I go to the pole vault expecting to see him there. I'm not even keeping track of him. And he'll be sitting there in his lawn chair right there. They get to sit right by the event. They can show them videos. They can talk in between vaults. Why can't we? You know, it's a risky event. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is a risky event. So is a high jump. You can hit your head on standard. You can jump out of the pit. That's what happens to athletes that haven't been coached a whole lot. Sometimes these kids are so talented, they get a late season run and they go to meets they've never been before and they don't have a good coach at their high school and they're just winging it. And they're athletic enough to get over bars. But you can't coach them. Can't help them. That doesn't make sense until they smack their head on the bar flat out of the pit. Let us coach the athletes, okay? Mic us up. Maybe somebody wants to hear that interchange between a coach and the athlete. I know I love to hear the mic'd up stuff. Both, pick your sport, football, basketball, right? On the sidelines, hearing a coach tell the athlete, you know, you get that interchange. Hearing what the athletes are talking about with the other athletes, right? I love to have Fred Warner for the 49ers mic'd up. George Kittle, you know, hear what they're saying on the sidelines. I guarantee you it's captivating, right? Most people have had that experience by now. So, hey, let's Let's learn from those that have gone before us. Football and college football, both pro and college, are just mega billion-dollar sports. They got so much focused interest. The games are so important. There's only one a week, and the season's short, and then you get the big payoff. Excuse me. You get to go to the playoffs and possibly a chance to be in the Super Bowl with millions and millions of people watching, right? Or the national championship game for college. Big deals. Track and field has those. We have the world championships every year. We have the Olympics every 4 years. We have, the NC2A championships every year. But how many people are watching? We don't get enough people watching because it's not well produced. So my thought process is let's get cameras at better angles. Let's get people down on the track that are knowledgeable about the event and tart it up. Let's get it on there. I've been watching some of these events, these high jump only events, like, where you're seeing, I saw Mahuchich jumping and there's a closed off end of the track and there's people paying, around. And, it's a great idea. It needs to be put forth in a way that it captures what's really going on. Nobody understands some of the nuances of the high jump because they don't get to see it. You don't get to see whether you'd want to pass, a height. People didn't know you can pass a height. You can be in the middle of competition. I could think of so many different ways to make high jump more interesting to some people. Taking the bar up an inch from the very beginning at a time. You could say, well, it's up to you. You can jump every inch if you want, or you can pass. You could pass multiple inches, right? But if you're going to go up at an inch at a time and just get good at it, make sure it's quick. That's the other thing. Train the people measuring the bar. Oh my gosh. Sometimes it takes these old guys a long time to measure stuff and get moving. But, if we're going up an inch at a time, we could have all that intrigue of, did he start on the odds? Did he start on the evens? How does that match up? If you're watching Barshim against Bondarenko, and Bondarenko opened in the Olympics one time at 7'4.5" at 225, right? So a guy like that can comfortably pass a lot of heights, and has made heights like 7'11", then there's a lot of little inches in between there that you can pass over. You don't have to jump every single one. Save your energy. So there would be intrigue, on that. Does he jump every height? Is he confident enough, or is he just, trying to make another bar each time? And is the guy that's confident and passing a couple times, what's the strategy? There's all kinds of little things like that. The mic'd up part would be fun because some of the athletes are game players. Some guys are talking trash. Okay. They're talking it, or they're walking it, or they're scissor kicking in the warm up, right? They're at a high bar, or they're wearing their sweats, right? I'm wearing my sweats. I'm so cool. I'm just going to wear my sweats. And here's the first jump, and it's a low height. It's 6'8". I'm going to open at 6'8", but that's low for me. So I'm going to wear my sweats. Cool. All those games are being played. I'm telling you, even at the higher levels. And you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know any of it unless you knew about it and you could tell people about it. So anyway, that's my rant on let's fix the sport of track and field. Let's make it more exciting to watch. Let's put cameras and even these, California is a big state. We have a lot of really good athletes in this state, well-coached athletes. There are athletes from all over, coaches from all over this great nation of ours that are going to come and try to steal the best Californian athletes and give them scholarships to their college. You know why? Because they're good. There's a lot of talent. Why wouldn't they? If you're going to produce a product like the SEC or the Big Ten and put it on, right, every week, you get a big match, big meet. Oh, who's the big meet this week? Hey, this is great. Let's get Oklahoma versus, Oklahoma's in the SEC now, right? Get Oklahoma versus Michigan. All right. Who's at Oklahoma? Well, they've had a couple great high jumpers there last few years, 7'6", 7'7". Let's see that dual meet. That'd be fun. Do they even do dual meets anymore? I hope they do. If not, conference championships. There's a lot of great conferences out there. Get it on TV. Get it well produced. get it advertised, get it on a station that has some power behind it. The SEC stuff. I got to watch the Big Ten channel a lot this year because UCLA football was on there and basketball. If it wasn't on channel two or whatever, you could find it on Big Ten channel lots of times. I'm hoping I didn't watch this year because I've been busy. Sky High and Fly Guy has been busy. I didn't watch a lot of track and field, if there is any to watch on Big Ten and SEC. I'm hoping so because they kind of take it seriously. So anyway, that's the rant this week. State meet. If you can find a way to watch it, I don't know. You can look it up. I do know sometimes they have live results. I do know sometimes they will have a live feed. The Nike Nationals is pretty good. I remember last year somebody did a live, uh, you know, broadcast from up in the stadium because they were at the meet and they showed a lot. I try to do the same. Again, it's difficult. Can't get down on the field. The other gripe I have this last couple weeks is I don't have any of Nate's or Tyler's good jumps, not from a decent angle. So as a coach, I I can't even break them down. I can't look at them. I mean, if I want to be a mile away and get those shots, now when I'm at a meet myself, if I'm running it, that's a great spot. But if they're letting the coaches down in the field for those meets, then I'm pretty much straight down the bar, about 5 degrees over. I've got my shot and I can see takeoff mechanics. I can see all kinds of great things that I use, and I don't have anything. No, almost no feedback the last 3 weeks, bad camera angles, whatever. So yeah, it's all kind of a big cluster in some ways. But the athletes, they just rise above it because they're athletes and they're tough and they've been training for this for a long time. We started jumping last summer, pretty much within a month of CIF finals being over. So Tyler got back to work. He only jumped 6'1" as a sophomore, and this year he's up to 6'6", could make 6'8", any minute. And Nate Baca had jumped 6'2" when I started training with him last year. Now he's up to 6'10", you know. So I mean they've been working hard, and this is a big shot. So they'll do fine, because athletes find a way. And you know, hopefully the experience that I have, I can help them a little bit. So until next time, that's the end of our rant. Again, I'm Troy Haynes, the Sky High and Fly Guy. This is Raise the Bar. You can follow us on Instagram at Sky High and Fly Jump Lab. You can follow us on our YouTube channel, okay, at Sky High and Fly Jump Lab. And if you want to listen to the podcast, you can find it on the YouTube. You can also find it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please subscribe. It's all free and great content. We'll give you the lowdown on what's going on. Lots of times we're getting some of the best young high jumpers here in the States. Every once in a while we'll get one from another country. I'm still trying to land a couple from across the pond. We've had a few. Had a Fabian Delrid from Sweden, who's starting to look pretty awesome again. And we've had some Abraham Vogelsang, who's a decathlete from Norway. So we've had a couple. Rosie Sharpley, I think it's Sharpies. She came over here from, I want to say Ireland, and was jumping at one of the SEC schools. We've had Elena Kulichenko, who just is finishing up her career at Georgia, and is one of the best young jumpers in the world. Competes for Cyprus, originally from the Soviet Union. Had her a couple times. Great guest. So we've got some of the young stars, and we'll get the coaches behind them. We'll get trainers, athletic sports, explosive weightlifting, whatever it takes, plyos. We'll get all that content to you. So follow along, and we'll give you the State of the Union after the state meet coming up here in a couple days. So until next time, it's Troy Haynes signing off. Have a good one.